The first reports came from the edge of space where few dared to travel. The devourer swarms that had terrorized shipping lanes for decades were found floating dead in the void. These creatures had been the stuff of nightmares, each one the size of a small moon with tentacles that could crush a battleship. Now they drifted like empty shells, their bioluminescent hearts dark and cold. Commander Alex Reed stared at the holographic display showing the latest casualty reports. 17 star systems had reported the same thing over the past 3 months. The galaxy's most feared predators were dying and nobody knew why. The shadow hunters that stalked ships through hyperspace were gone. The bone crushers of the outer rim lay scattered on barren moons. Even the crystal spiders that lived in asteroid fields had vanished. "Sir, we have another report from the Kino system," Lieutenant Tom Hayes said as he entered the command center. His face was pale and his hands shook slightly as he handed over the data pad. "The entire population of Ironjaw serpents is dead, all of them." Dr. Maria Santos looked up from her research station. She had been studying the phenomenon for weeks, trying to find a pattern. "That makes 43 species. In the last 90 days, she said quietly. "All apex predators. All found dead with no signs of struggle or disease." Reed rubbed his temples. The Galactic Defense Force had been scrambling to understand what was happening. Every species in the galaxy was on edge. The creatures that were dying had been the greatest threats to space travel and colonization for centuries. Their sudden deaths should have been cause for celebration, but something felt wrong. "Prepare the investigation ship," Reed ordered. "We're going to Kinos to see for ourselves." The journey to Kinos took 3 days through hyperspace. During the trip, Dr. Santos compiled everything they knew about the dead creatures. Each species had different biology, different habitats, different ways of hunting. The only thing they shared was their ability to destroy entire civilizations if left unchecked. When they arrived at Kinos, the sight was both beautiful and terrible. The planet's surface was covered with the massive corpses of Ironjaw serpents. These creatures had been known to burrow through solid rock and swallow entire mining operations. Each one was over 100 meters long with diamond-hard scales. Now they lay motionless, their eyes clouded over. "Scanning for life signs," Hayes reported as their shuttle descended toward the planet's surface. "Nothing. The entire ecosystem is dead except for the smaller creatures." They landed near the largest concentration of bodies. Dr. Santos immediately began taking samples while Reed and Hayes secured the area. The air was thick with the smell of decay, but there was something else. Something that made Reed's skin crawl. "The neural pathways are completely fried," Dr. Santos said as she examined tissue samples under her portable microscope. "Whatever killed them attacked their nervous systems directly. It's like someone knew exactly how their brains worked and targeted the specific neurons that controlled their vital functions." Reed found that disturbing. "You're saying this was deliberate? Someone or something specifically designed to kill these creatures?" "Not just kill them," Dr. Santos replied. "Exterminate them. Look at these readings." The attack was so precise it left the rest of their biology intact. This wasn't a weapon of war. This was a tool of extinction. As they continued their investigation, they discovered something even more troubling. The bodies weren't randomly scattered. They were arranged in patterns as if someone had been studying them. Tissue samples had been taken from specific organs. Brain matter had been carefully extracted for analysis. "Commander," Hayes called from a ridge overlooking the death field. "You need to see this." Reed climbed up to Hayes's position and saw what had caught the lieutenant's attention. In the distance, barely visible through the haze, was a small outpost. It looked human. They approached the outpost carefully. It was definitely human construction, with the familiar angular design of Earth's colonial architecture. But according to their records, no human settlements existed in this system. "This is Commander Reed of the Galactic Defense Force," he broadcast on standard frequencies. "Identify yourselves." The response came quickly. "Commander Reed, this is Research Station Kino 7. We're conducting ecological studies. Please identify your mission here." The three of them exchanged glances. An ecological research station in a system full of dead apex predators was too much of a coincidence. We're investigating the mass extinction event, Reed replied. We'd like to speak with your station commander. There was a long pause before the response came. Of course, Commander. We'll prepare to receive you. The research station was larger than it had appeared from a distance. It contained sophisticated laboratories, living quarters for at least 50 people, and equipment that seemed far too advanced for a simple ecological survey. The station commander was a middle-aged woman named Dr. Beth Williams, who seemed nervous about their unexpected visit. We've been monitoring the situation, Dr. Williams explained as she led them through the facility. It's quite tragic, really. These creatures were magnificent in their own way. How long have you been stationed here? Reed asked. About 6 months, Dr. Williams replied. We arrived just before the first deaths were reported. Dr. Santos noticed something that made her stop walking. Commander, look at this equipment. These aren't standard research tools. This is military-grade biological analysis equipment. Dr. Williams's face went pale. I can explain that. We needed advanced tools to study such dangerous creatures. But the creatures were already dead when we arrived, Reed pointed out. Your own records show you've been here for 6 months. The first deaths were reported 5 months ago. The silence that followed was deafening. Dr. Williams looked like she wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. Finally, she spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. We were sent here to study them before they died, she admitted. Command wanted to understand their biology, their weaknesses. We thought it was just research. Research for what? Reed demanded. To find ways to protect our colonies, Dr. Williams said. These creatures were the biggest threat to human expansion in this sector. Command said if we could understand them better, we could find ways to defend against them. Reed felt something cold settle in his stomach. Dr. Williams, I need you to be very clear about something. Did your research contribute to the deaths of these creatures? The woman's face crumpled. We didn't know, she whispered. We just sent our findings back to command. We never thought they would use the information to kill them all. The terrible truth was beginning to dawn on Reed. The systematic nature of the deaths, the precise targeting of neural pathways, the presence of human researchers studying the creatures before they died. This wasn't a natural phenomenon or an alien attack. This was extermination, and humans were behind it. The journey back to headquarters took 4 days, and Reed spent every hour of it trying to process what they had discovered. Dr. Williams had provided them with enough information to piece together a disturbing picture. The research station on Kinos was not alone. There were dozens of similar facilities scattered across the galaxy, all studying dangerous creatures, all reporting back to Earth Command. Dr. Santos worked frantically to analyze the data they had collected. The tissue samples from the dead creatures showed traces of synthetic compounds that didn't exist in nature. Each compound was specifically designed to target the unique brain chemistry of different species. It was sophisticated biological warfare, more precise than anything the galaxy had ever seen. This is impossible, Dr. Santos muttered as she reviewed the results for the 100th time. The level of knowledge required to create these compounds would take decades of research. Someone would have had to study every single species in detail, map their entire nervous systems, and then develop specific toxins for each one. Lieutenant Hayes had been running analysis on the timeline of deaths. It gets worse, he said grimly. I've been tracking the patterns, and every single extinction event happened within 6 weeks of human contact. Trade missions, exploration vessels, diplomatic meetings. Wherever humans went, the local apex predators started dying shortly after. Reed felt sick. The implications were staggering. If humans were systematically eliminating dangerous species across the galaxy, it meant that Earth's government had been planning this for years. The scope of the operation was beyond anything he had imagined. We need to report this to the Galactic Council, Reed said. Every species has the right to know what's happening. Do they? Hayes asked quietly. Sir, I've been thinking about this, and I'm not sure we understand the full situation. These creatures weren't just dangerous to humans, they were dangerous to everyone. How many civilizations have been destroyed by devourer swarms? How many colony ships have been lost to shadow hunters? Dr. Santos looked up from her work. That doesn't justify genocide, Lieutenant. These species had as much right to exist as any other life form in the galaxy. Did they? Hayes pressed. The ironjaw serpents on Kinos had wiped out 3 different sentient species before humans ever arrived in this sector. The crystal spiders were responsible for the destruction of the Mallory homeworld. Maybe someone finally decided that the galaxy would be better off without these creatures. Reed could see the logic in Hayes's argument, but it terrified him. If humans were capable of this level of systematic extermination, what else might they be capable of? More importantly, who had decided which species deserved to live and which deserved to die? When they arrived at headquarters, Reed immediately requested a meeting with Admiral Foster, the commanding officer of the Galactic Defense Force. Foster was a veteran of the border wars and had always been straight with his subordinates. If anyone would give Reed honest answers, it would be him. Admiral, we need to talk about the creature deaths, Reed said as soon as they were alone in Foster's office. We have evidence that suggests human involvement. Foster's expression didn't change. What kind of evidence? Reed laid out everything they had discovered. The research stations, the synthetic compounds, the timeline of deaths following human contact. As he spoke, he watched Foster's face carefully. The Admiral showed no surprise, no shock, no outrage. He just listened with the calm attention of someone receiving a routine briefing. Admiral, did you know about this? Reed asked when he finished. Foster was quiet for a long moment. Then he activated a privacy screen that would prevent their conversation from being recorded or monitored. Alex, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to understand the position we're in. Yes, I knew about the operation. Most of the senior command staff did. Reed felt the world shift beneath his feet. How long has this been going on? Project Shepherd began 15 years ago, Foster said. It started as a defensive measure after the Rim Wars. We lost 3 entire colony. Fleets to creature attacks, and the casualties were in the millions. The government decided that reactive defense wasn't enough. We needed to be proactive. So you decided to commit genocide? Reed couldn't keep the anger out of his voice. We decided to eliminate threats before they could harm innocent people. Foster replied calmly. Alex, these weren't random animals. These were apex predators that had been terrorizing the galaxy for centuries. The devourer swarms alone were responsible for the extinction of 47 different species. We ended that threat. Reed stared at his commanding officer. Who gave you the right to make that decision for the entire galaxy? Who gave the creatures the right to destroy entire civilizations? Foster shot back. Look, I understand your moral concerns, but this isn't a simple situation. We identified the greatest threats to galactic stability and eliminated them. The results speak for themselves. Ship losses are down 90%. Colony success rates have improved dramatically. We've saved more lives than we've taken. But you didn't just kill the creatures, Reed said. You studied them first. You learned everything about them. You mapped their biology, their behavior, their weaknesses. This wasn't just about defense. This was about control. Foster's expression hardened. Yes, it was about control. For the first time in galactic history, we have the ability to shape the environment to favor peaceful species over aggressive ones. We can protect the weak from the strong. We can create a galaxy where exploration and colonization don't end in tragedy. The conversation continued for another hour, but Reed could see that Foster genuinely believed in what they were doing. In the Admiral's mind, humans had become the galaxy's protectors, eliminating threats that other species couldn't handle. It was a noble mission, justified by the results, but Reed couldn't shake the feeling that there was something darker at work. The precision of the operation, the systematic nature of the exterminations, the careful study of each species before their elimination. It suggested a level of planning and coordination that went far beyond simple threat elimination. Over the following weeks, Reed began his own investigation. He used his security clearance to access classified files, and what he found made his blood run cold. Project Shepard wasn't just about eliminating existing threats. It was about reshaping the galaxy's entire ecosystem to favor human expansion. The project files contained detailed analyses of thousands of species, not just the apex predators. Scientists had identified which creatures were useful to humans, which were neutral, and which were neutrals to human goals. They had mapped food chains, studied reproduction cycles, and calculated the ecological impact of removing specific species. The plan was breathtaking in its scope. By eliminating key predators, they could allow prey species to flourish. By removing competitors, they could create niches for human-friendly organisms. By controlling the ecosystem, they could ensure that human colonies would always have the advantage. Reed realized that the galaxy's apex predators were just the beginning. The real horror wasn't that humans were killing dangerous creatures. The real horror was that humans were quietly becoming the galaxy's dominant species by eliminating any form of life that might challenge their supremacy, and the most terrifying part was that most humans didn't even know it was happening. They saw the improved safety statistics, the successful colonies, the reduced casualties. They thought they were living in a golden age of exploration and expansion. They didn't realize that their government was systematically murdering entire species to make it possible. Reed knew he needed proof that couldn't be dismissed or classified. The files he had accessed were convincing, but they could be explained away as theoretical research or defensive planning. He needed to see the operation in action, to witness the systematic extermination firsthand. His opportunity came when intelligence reports indicated unusual activity around the Vega Prime system. A new species of creature had been discovered there, something the locals called voidwalkers. These beings could phase through solid matter and had been attacking mining operations. According to the reports, they were highly intelligent and extremely aggressive. Reed volunteered to lead a reconnaissance mission to assess the threat. What he didn't mention was that he planned to investigate whether a human research team was already there, studying the creatures before they mysteriously died. The journey to Vega Prime took 2 weeks. During that time, Reed carefully reviewed everything known about the Voidwalkers. They were unlike anything previously encountered, with the ability to exist partially outside normal spacetime. Their attacks were coordinated and strategic, suggesting a level of intelligence that made them particularly dangerous. When they arrived at the system, Reed's worst fears were confirmed. Long-range sensors detected a human research facility on the moon of Vega Prime's 4th planet. The facility was not listed in any official records, but its energy signature matched the pattern of other Project Shepard installations. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the surface," Lieutenant Hayes reported. "It's from a Dr. Roy Kim, requesting permission to come aboard." Reed's blood ran cold. Dr. Kim was listed in the classified files as one of the lead scientists for Project Shepard. His presence here could only mean one thing: the Voidwalkers were already being studied for extinction. "Tell Dr. Kim he's welcome aboard," Reed said. "And prepare to record everything he says." Dr. Kim was a thin man in his 50s with the pale complexion of someone who spent most of his time in underground laboratories. He seemed pleased to meet Reed and showed no signs of nervousness or secrecy. In fact, he appeared eager to discuss his work. "Commander Reed, I'm delighted to meet you," Dr. Kim said as he entered the briefing room. "I've been following your career. Your work on the Centauri incident was brilliant." "Thank you, Doctor. I understand you're conducting research on the Voidwalkers." "Oh yes, fascinating creatures," Dr. Kim said enthusiastically. "Completely unique biology. They exist in a state of quantum superposition that allows them to phase in and out of our reality. We've learned so much about extra-dimensional physics just by studying them." Reed felt like he was talking to a man discussing his favorite hobby rather than planning genocide. "Are they as dangerous as the reports suggest?" "More so," Dr. Kim replied seriously. "These creatures don't just attack randomly. They're coordinated, intelligent, and they learn from each encounter. Left unchecked, they could eliminate human presence in this entire sector within a decade. So, you're studying ways to defend against them? Dr. Kim's smile was genuinely warm. Better than that, Commander. We're studying ways to eliminate them entirely. I'm happy to report that we've had a breakthrough just this week. The casual way he discussed extermination made Reed's skin crawl. Eliminate them? Oh yes. We've identified the quantum frequency that maintains their phase state. By disrupting that frequency, we can force them back into normal spacetime, where they become vulnerable to conventional weapons. Even better, we've developed a resonance pulse that can disrupt their entire population simultaneously. Reed struggled to keep his voice steady. You're talking about killing them all at once? Exactly, Dr. Kim said proudly. No more piecemeal attacks, no more drawn-out campaigns. One pulse, and the entire species ceases to be a threat. We'll deploy it next week, and by the end of the month, this system will be safe for human colonization. The conversation continued for another hour, with Dr. Kim enthusiastically explaining the technical details of his work. He spoke about the Voidwalker's biology with genuine scientific interest, but there was no hint of moral consideration about what he was planning. To him, these creatures were simply problems to be solved. Dr. Kim, Reed said carefully, have you considered the ethical implications of what you're doing? These creatures are intelligent. They have a right to exist. Dr. Kim looked genuinely puzzled. Commander, with respect, that's not how we approach these situations. These creatures are an existential threat to human expansion. They've already killed hundreds of miners and researchers. Every day we delay action, more innocent. People die, but surely there are other options. Containment, relocation, some kind of communication attempt? We tried communication, Dr. Kim said. The creatures responded by killing the entire diplomatic team. As for containment, their phasing ability makes that impossible. Relocation would. Just move the problem somewhere else. No, Commander, elimination is the only viable solution. Reed realized that Dr. Kim wasn't a monster. He was a dedicated scientist who genuinely believed he was protecting humanity. That somehow made it worse. Evil people could be stopped, but good people doing terrible things were much more dangerous. After Dr. Kim returned to the surface, Reed called an emergency meeting with his senior staff. Dr. Santos and Lieutenant Hayes had been monitoring the conversation, and their faces reflected the same horror that Red felt. We have to stop this, Dr. Santos said immediately. We can't let them commit genocide against an entire species. How? Hayes asked. Dr. Kim has legal authority for his research. Project Shepherd is an official government program. We'd be committing treason if we interfere. Then maybe it's time to commit treason, Reed said quietly. I've been reviewing the files, and the Voidwalkers are just the latest target. There are dozens of other species scheduled for elimination. This isn't about defense anymore. This is about clearing the galaxy of anything that might inconvenience human expansion. He activated the ship's main display and showed them the classified species list. Hundreds of creatures were marked for study and elimination. Some were apex predators, but others were simply competitors for resources or territory. The scope of the planned extermination was staggering. Look at this, Reed said, pointing to specific entries. The singing crystals of Alpha Centauri are marked for elimination because their harmonic frequencies interfere with human communication systems. The tree shepherds of the forest worlds are targeted because they prevent human logging operations. These aren't dangerous predators, they're inconveniences. Dr. Santos stared at the list in horror. They're planning to reshape the entire galaxy. They want to eliminate any species that might compete with humans for resources or territory. And they're doing it systematically, Hayes added. Each extinction looks natural or accidental. No one species realizes what's happening because they can't see the bigger picture, Reed made his decision. We're going to warn the Galactic Council. Every species has the right to know what humanity is planning. So that will end your career. Hayes warned, "It might end all our careers." "And then so be it," Reed replied. "I joined the defense force to protect innocent life, not to enable genocide. If that means standing against my own government, then that's what I'll do." But as Reed prepared to expose Project Shepherd, he realized that the operation was far more advanced than he had imagined. The systematic nature of the exterminations, the careful planning, the precise execution. This wasn't just about eliminating current threats. This was about ensuring that humanity would never face another threat again. The monsters were dying fast. But the real horror was that humanity had become something far more dangerous than any creature they had eliminated. They had become a species that could look at an entire galaxy and calmly decide which parts of it deserved to exist. And the most terrifying part was that most humans would probably approve if they knew the truth. The Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Station had never seen such tension. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated sections, but none of them were looking at the central speaking platform. Instead, every alien. I was focused on the small human delegation, as if they were watching a dangerous predator that might strike at any moment. Reed stood at the central podium, his hands trembling slightly as he prepared to address the assembled species. The evidence he had gathered was overwhelming, but he knew that presenting it would change everything. Once the galaxy knew what humanity had been doing, there would be no going back. "Honorable delegates," Reed began, his voice carrying across the vast chamber, "I stand before you today to reveal information that threatens the very foundation of galactic civilization. For the past 15 years, humanity has been systematically eliminating apex predators and other species across the galaxy through a program called Project Shepherd." The reaction was immediate and telling. The alien delegates didn't gasp in shock or cry out in outrage. Instead, they became perfectly still, like prey animals that had just confirmed their worst fears. The silence that followed was more damning than any accusation. The Thakari ambassador, a tall reptilian being named Corvex, was the first to speak. "Commander Reed, we appreciate your courage in bringing this information forward. However, we must ask, are you speaking as an official representative of humanity or as an individual?" The question caught Reed off guard. He had expected demands for evidence, calls for investigation, or expressions of outrage. Instead, the aliens seemed more concerned about whether humanity had officially acknowledged their actions. "I am speaking as an individual," Reed replied. "The human government has not authorized this disclosure." A ripple of what might have been relief passed through the chamber. The Molari delegate, a tentacled being whose species had lost their homeworld to crystal spiders, made a gesture that Reed recognized as nervous gratitude. "We understand the personal risk you have taken," the Molari said through their translator. "We also understand that your species values loyalty and hierarchy. Your decision to speak against your government's wishes shows great courage." Reed was beginning to realize that the aliens weren't shocked by his revelations because they already knew. "How long have you suspected?" The Vorthic Elder, a crystalline being whose people communicated through harmonic frequencies, sang a complex melody that the translator rendered as words. "We have been tracking the patterns for 8 months. The correlation between human presence and predator deaths was too consistent to be coincidence. Why didn't you say anything?" Reed asked. The chamber fell silent again. Finally, Corvex spoke. "For all of them, Commander Reed, what would you have us do? Accuse humanity of genocide? Demand that you stop? We have seen what your species is capable of. We have witnessed your efficiency, your technology, your military might. The creatures that are dying were the most dangerous predators in the galaxy, and you eliminated them without any of us even knowing how it was done." The truth hit Reed like a physical blow. The aliens weren't just afraid of what humanity had done. They were afraid of what humanity might do to them if they resisted. "We have been hoping," the Molari delegate continued, "that someone within humanity would recognize the moral implications of these actions and speak out. We have been waiting for a human conscience to emerge." Dr. Santos, who had been monitoring the proceedings from the human delegation area, stepped forward. "Many humans don't know about Project Shepherd. If they did, there would be opposition. Would there? Asked a new voice. The chamber's attention turned to see Admiral Foster entering. Through the main doors, accompanied by a full security detail. Dr. Santos, I think you underestimate your fellow humans. Reed's heart sank. Foster's presence could only mean that Earth Command had learned about his planned disclosure. Admiral, I can explain. No need to explain, Commander, Foster said, as he approached the podium. In fact, I'm here to make an official statement on behalf of the human government. We've decided it's time for complete transparency. The alien delegates shifted nervously in their seats. Reed could see fear in their body language, the same fear that prey animals showed when a predator decided to stop hiding. Ladies and gentlemen, Foster addressed the chamber. Commander Reed has accurately described Project Shepherd. I'm here to confirm that, yes, humanity has been systematically eliminating dangerous species across the galaxy. We've done so deliberately, efficiently, and without regret. The bluntness of the admission sent a chill through the chamber. Reed had expected denials, cover-ups, or at least attempts at justification. Instead, Foster was calmly acknowledging genocide as if it were a routine policy decision. Over the past 15 years, Foster continued, we have eliminated 43 species of apex predators that posed existential threats to galactic civilization. The devourer swarms that terrorized shipping lanes for centuries are gone. The shadow hunters that made hyperspace travel a gamble with death are extinct. The bone crushers that consumed entire colonies have been eliminated. He paused, letting the implications sink in. The result is that civilian casualties from creature attacks have dropped by 96%. Colony success rates have improved dramatically. Trade routes that were once death traps are now safe for civilian traffic. We have accomplished in 15 years what the galactic community couldn't achieve in 1,000. Korvax stood slowly, his scaled hands visibly shaking. Admiral Foster, you speak of eliminating threats to galactic civilization, but who gave humanity the authority to make those decisions? Who appointed you as the galaxy's executioner? Foster's expression didn't change. We appointed ourselves. The previous system wasn't working. Dangerous predators were multiplying faster than they could be contained. Entire species were being driven to extinction by creatures that served no purpose except destruction. We identified the problem and solved it. But you didn't just eliminate predators, the Mallory delegate said. Our intelligence suggests that you've been studying all forms of life, categorizing them, evaluating their usefulness to human expansion. That's correct, Foster admitted without hesitation. We've been conducting a comprehensive analysis of galactic biodiversity. We've identified species that are beneficial to civilization, species that are neutral, and species that are harmful. We've been taking appropriate action based on those assessments. The chamber erupted in what Reed recognized as expressions of terror from different species. The aliens weren't just afraid of what humanity had done. They were afraid of what humanity was planning to do. Admiral, Reed said desperately, surely you can see the moral implications of what you're describing. You're talking about playing God with the entire galaxy. I'm talking about accepting responsibility, Foster replied. For too long, the galactic community has been content to react to threats rather than prevent them. We've watched civilizations be destroyed because no one was willing to make the hard choices. Humanity has proven that we're willing to make those choices. The Vorthic elder sang a melody that the translator rendered as a question. What happens to species that you classify as harmful to civilization? What happens to us if we oppose your actions? Foster's pause was answer enough. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. We hope that won't be necessary. We've designed our policies to benefit all peaceful species. Those who work within the new galactic order will prosper. Those who oppose, it will be treated as threats to civilization. Reed realized that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. Humanity hadn't just eliminated apex predators. They had positioned themselves as the ultimate apex predator with the power to decide which species lived and which died, The aliens in the chamber understood this too. They sat in terrified silence, not because they were shocked by humanity's actions, but because they finally understood their new place in the galactic hierarchy. They were no longer independent species sharing the galaxy. They were subjects in a human empire, and their survival depended on staying in humanity's good graces. The monsters were dying fast. But the real horror was that humanity had become something far more dangerous than any creature they had eliminated. They had become a species that could reshape the galaxy according to their vision of order, and they had the power to eliminate anyone who disagreed with that vision. The emergency session of the Galactic Council continued for 18 hours. By the end, the new reality was clear to everyone in the chamber. Humanity had not just eliminated apex predators. They had systematically positioned themselves as the dominant force in the galaxy, with the power to decide which species would survive and prosper. Reed watched in horror as the alien delegates gradually accepted their new situation. There was no angry rebellion, no defiant speeches, no calls for resistance. Instead, there was the quiet desperation of species that had suddenly realized they were no longer at the top of the food chain. The Thakari Republic wishes to formalize our cooperation with humanity, Ambassador Korvex announced. We believe that working together will benefit both our species. One by one, the other delegates made similar statements. The Molari offered to share their biotechnology. The Vorthek proposed joint research projects. The crystalline beings from the Outer Rim volunteered to help identify other potentially dangerous species. Reed felt sick. These weren't negotiations between equals. These were submission ceremonies, with each species desperately trying to prove their usefulness to their new human overlords. Dr. Santos approached him during a brief recess. "This is insane," she whispered. "They're all terrified of us. They're willing to help us commit genocide just to avoid being targeted themselves." "Can you blame them?" Reed replied quietly. "We've proven that we can eliminate any species we consider a threat. They're making the rational choice to stay on our good side. But it's still genocide," Dr. Santos said. "Even if we're doing it efficiently and for supposedly good reasons, we're still deciding which species deserve to exist." Reed had been thinking about that exact question for weeks. The worst part is that most humans will probably support this when they find out about it. Admiral Foster is right about the results. Ship losses are down, colony success rates are up. The galaxy is safer for human expansion than it's ever been. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of President Angela Torres, who had traveled to Nexus Station to address the council personally. Reed had never seen the president in person, but she appeared calm and confident, as if the current crisis was just another item on her agenda. "Honorable delegates," President Torres began, "I want to address the concerns that have been raised about humanity's actions. First, let me be clear. We do not apologize for protecting innocent life. The species we have eliminated were responsible for countless atrocities. We have ended more suffering than we have caused." She paused, letting her words sink in. "However, I understand that our methods have raised questions about humanity's intentions. Let me be completely transparent about our goals." Reed found himself holding his breath. The president was about to reveal humanity's true plans for the galaxy. "We envision a galaxy where a peaceful species can coexist and prosper without fear of extinction," President Torres continued. "We have the technology, the knowledge, and the determination to make this vision a reality. But achieving this goal requires making difficult decisions about which life forms contribute to galactic stability and which threaten it." The president activated a holographic display that showed a map of the galaxy. Different systems were marked in various colors. Green systems represent areas where dangerous species have been eliminated and peaceful civilizations are flourishing. Yellow systems are currently under evaluation. Red systems contain threats that require immediate attention. Reed counted the red systems and felt his blood turn to ice. There were hundreds of them scattered across every sector of the galaxy. Each one represented species that humanity had marked for extinction. "Some of you may be wondering about the Criteria we use to evaluate species, President Torres said. Our scientists have developed a comprehensive assessment system based on aggression levels, territorial expansion patterns, resource consumption rates, and threat potential to civilian populations. Ambassador Corvex raised a scaled hand. Madam President, what about species that are aggressive but not necessarily threats to galactic stability? Many civilizations have gone through violent periods in their development. An excellent question, the President replied. We understand that species evolve and change over time. Our evaluation system accounts for this by looking at long-term trends rather than isolated incidents. Species that show consistent patterns of improvement are given opportunities to demonstrate their commitment to peaceful coexistence. Read. Realize what she was really saying. Humanity had appointed itself as judge, jury, and executioner for the entire galaxy. They would decide which species were allowed to evolve and which would be eliminated before they could become threats. Dr. Santos stood up from the human delegation area. Madam President, I must object to this policy. We're talking about playing God with billions of lives. Who gives us the right to decide which species deserve to exist? The President's expression remained calm, but Reed could see steel beneath her diplomatic facade. Dr. Santos, I understand your moral concerns, but we must consider the greater good. In the past century, how many civilizations have been destroyed by apex predators? How many species have gone extinct because no one was willing to act decisively against threats? But that doesn't justify genocide, Dr. Santos pressed. There have to be other options. Containment, relocation, genetic modification to reduce aggression. We could find ways to coexist with these species rather than eliminating them. We tried those approaches, the President replied. The results were ineffective and often led to greater suffering. Containment fails when creatures break free and attack civilian populations. Relocation simply moves the problem to another location. Genetic modification raises even more serious ethical questions than elimination. Reed found himself speaking before he had consciously decided to. What about species that are currently peaceful but might become threats in the future? Are we going to eliminate them based on theoretical possibilities? The President turned her attention to him. Commander Reed, you raise an important point. Our predictive models suggest that certain species have the potential to develop dangerous capabilities over time. In those cases, we prefer to guide their development in positive directions through diplomatic and economic incentives. And if those incentives don't work? Reed asked. Then we take more direct action, the President replied without hesitation. The safety of galactic civilization must take priority over the survival of individual species. The chamber fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. Humanity wasn't just eliminating current threats. They were actively monitoring every species in the galaxy and making decisions about their future based on computer models and threat assessments. The Mallory delegate made a gesture of desperate submission. Madam President, how can we ensure that our species continues to meet your standards for peaceful coexistence? By demonstrating your commitment to galactic stability, the President answered. Species that contribute to scientific advancement, economic development, and peaceful expansion will always have a place in our vision of the future. Those that threaten these goals will not. Reed watched as the alien delegates processed this information. They were being offered a choice: complete submission to human authority or potential extinction. For most of them, it wasn't really a choice at all. I want to conclude by addressing the moral arguments that have been raised, President Torres said. Yes, we have eliminated species. Yes, we have made life and death decisions about entire civilizations. But we have done so to prevent greater suffering and to create a galaxy where peaceful species can flourish without fear. She gestured to the holographic display. Look at the green systems. Colony ships travel safely through hyperspace. Mining operations work without fear of creature attacks. Children grow up on frontier worlds without wondering if monsters will emerge from the darkness. We have created something that the galaxy has never seen before: true security for peaceful species. Reed had to admit that the president's arguments were compelling. The galaxy was safer now. Human colonies were thriving. Other peaceful species were benefiting from the elimination of apex predators. The results were undeniably positive, but the methods horrified him. Humanity had become something that no species in galactic history had ever achieved, absolute arbiters of life and death for the entire galaxy. They had the power to decide which species lived, which died, and which were allowed to evolve. As the session ended and the delegates began to file out, Reed noticed something that made his blood run cold. The alien representatives weren't looking at each other as they left. Instead, they were all watching the human delegation with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. They had accepted their new reality. Humanity was now the apex predator of the galaxy, and every other species existed only as long as humans allowed them to. The monsters were dying fast, but the real horror was that humanity had become something far more dangerous than any creature they had eliminated. They had become a species that could look at an entire galaxy and decide with scientific precision and moral certainty which parts of it deserved to exist. And the most terrifying part was that they genuinely believed they were doing the right thing. Reed left the chamber knowing that the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had won the ultimate victory. They had eliminated the possibility of ever being threatened again. But in doing so, they had become the very thing that other species would now have nightmares about. The age of monsters was over. The age of humanity had begun.